The Ship of Doom by M.A. Bennett, Chapter 2, 15th January 1894, at 11:50 a.m. When Luna saw the Greenwich Observatory high on its green hill, she felt like she was seeing an old friend. The house shed shared with Papa had not been far from here, and as Aunt Grace briskly helped her out of the hansom cab right by the entrance, she suddenly missed her father very badly. Of course, Luna had never been inside the observatory because such an honor was reserved for the most eminent scientists of the age. Aunt Grace, however, crossed the threshold as if it was her own, leading Luna by the hand through the iron gates and across the paved courtyard. A great brass line, like single railway track, divided the pavings. She was so curious that she forgot to be frightened of her aunt. "What's that?" Aunt Grace actually stopped. "That," she said, "is the prime meridian, a geographical reference line that passes through this very spot, which gives us Greenwich Mean Time. This is the place which all of our clocks are set. You are at the very home of time." A doorman let them through the entrance with no more than a touch of his hat. Clearly, Aunt Grace was known here. She led Luna along passageways and downstairs and through doorways to the secret heart of the observatory, all the time following the brass line of the meridian. Eventually, the line stopped dead at a blank wall, at the foot of a grandfather clock, tall as Aunt Grace with the pendulum swinging in its belly. Luna looked up at Aunt Grace. It was quite literally the end of the line. But Aunt Grace reached up to open the casement, and she altered the gilded hands of the clock until they read 4:45 exactly. As soon as she did so, the whole body of the clock swung outwards. It was a door. Aunt Grace stepped through the clock door into the dark, and Luna found herself in a room that was so dimly lit that at first it was hard to make out what was in it. But as the clock, which had closed behind them, chimed noon with a silvery song, Aunt Grace said, "Welcome to the butterfly room." Gradually, Luna's eyes adjusted and she could see that the room was 12-sided in shape, and each wall had a floor-to-ceiling shutter that was tightly closed. And around the walls, just like at the house in Kensington, there were hundreds and thousands of butterflies in a myriad of colors and shapes and sizes, all pinned to the cards and carefully captioned. Luna looked at the nearest one to her head, with their velvety wings and splayed antennae. In Aunt Grace's house, she didn't really like them, but here they made her feel strangely at home. She even recognized an old acquaintance, a blue morphle butterfly, as big as a handspan, just like the one in Aunt Grace's study, with wings the exact azure blue as the dress Luna was wearing. Then she noticed that around the lamplit edges of the room stood many distinguished-looking figures, perhaps 40 or 50 in all. There was a mixture of ladies and gentlemen, all in smart evening dress like Aunt Grace. The men in top hats, which looked like black stovepipes, the women in bonnets. They were all having hushed but important-sounding conversations, and didn't bother to stop when Luna and Aunt Grace came in. But Luna did notice one or two of them looking at her in an interested way, all kindly but curious, as if she was some sort of new species. Perhaps that could be explained by the fact that there was only one other child in the room, a handsome blonde boy, about the same height as Luna, standing with the handsome blonde man. Aunt Grace nodded at the company, but headed straight to greet the blonde man, who clicked his heels smartly together, bowed his head sharply, and kissed her butterfly wrist. From that moment, she forgot Luna and the boy and just talked over their heads. Luna didn't understand a word as they were speaking in a foreign language, but she did learn one thing from the conversation. The blond man waved his hands about as he talked, and she could see on his left wrist a butterfly tattoo. Is that your mother? Luna could understand why the blond boy had asked that. She and Aunt Grace share the Goodhart auburn hair and green eyes. My aunt, she's a scientist. Is that your father? Yes. The boy's golden hair fell in his eyes, and he had a bit of raking it back with a pale hand. Is he a scientist too? A doctor, a physician? Asked Luna. Yes, but also a great inventor. Dr. Tinius Cass. The boy said his father's name with a touching pride, as if Luna should have heard of him. He is from Prussia. That is, we both are. That explains the boy's light accent. Luna wasn't too sure about where Prussia was. She knew it was an empire somewhere in Eastern Europe, and vaguely thought it was perhaps made up of bits of Germany and bits of Russia. What she did know from the front of Papa's newspaper was that they always seemed to be fighting, either for themselves or for others. My name's Constantine, said the Prussian boy. I'm Luna. Luna studied her new acquaintance. He looked. She searched for a word. Expensive, in his well-cut silvery gray suit of clothes and his stretched white Eton collars and silken cravats. But he seemed very down to earth, and not superior at all. And he smiled a crooked half-smile. Encouraged by his friendliness, she said, Did you know that your father has a clockwork butterfly tattooed on his wrist? Yes, said Constantine. I have been asking about it for years. What did he say? That he would explain it to me on my 13th birthday. When is that? Today? Oh, happy birthday. Thank you. Luna looked at the boy with the respect due from someone who was only 12 to someone who was 13. Did you get anything nice? His answer was a strange one. This is the first birthday I have had standing up on my own 2 feet, he said in his precise English. I have never traveled. I have never even been to school. I have spent most of my life on my sickbed with only books for company. My brothers call me constantly ill. What was wrong with you? My heart. Some disease with a long name, a long word of the heart. Luna studied the boy because she was so tall. He was almost exactly her height. You look well now, she said comfortingly. I had an operation. A very clever surgeon. My father says I have a clockwork heart now. Luna smiled at what was clearly a joke. So what did you get for your birthday? Besides the clockwork heart, I mean? He smiled, his half smile again. Now I am well, I ask for an adventure. And did you get one? He looked about him. I think this might be it. Luna felt a thrill travel up her spine. You may be right, she said. How about this as a starting point? My aunt has the same tattoo as your father. Constantine turned wide gray eyes on her. Really? He thought for a moment. Then I would be willing to wager that everyone else in this room has one too. Luna leaned forward and looked left and right around the room. Sure enough, every left wrist that was exposed showed the same mark of the clockwork butterfly. Aunt Grace turned to her. Stop fidgeting, child. Who are these people, Aunt? Are they all scientists? Some, not all. Some are authors, like Mr. H.G. Wells over there. Explorers, like Miss Mary Kingsley, beyond him. Artists, like Mr. Burne-Jones to your left. They are the finest minds of our age, a league of extraordinary ladies and gentlemen. Somehow, when Aunt Grace said this, she managed not to sound big-headed, just matter-of-fact, like the Royal Society. Luna thought this was an intelligent thing to say. The Royal Society she knew was a collection of the cleverest mind in the country. Not at all like the Royal Society, sniffed Aunt Grace disapprovingly. They do not admit women much to their detriment. Luna was not entirely sure what detriment meant, but was sure it was a bad thing just from the way Aunt Grace said it. Slightly crushed, she asked, "So, are all these ladies and gentlemen interested in butterflies?" Aunt Grace turned and gave her a very direct look with those green eyes. "No, none of them are. Not even me." Luna thought of all the butterflies at home and looked around the room at all the winged creatures flattened against the walls. Then why? "It's a cover," Aunt Grace said. "A blind, a respectable pursuit for ladies and gentlemen in order to mask our true business." "And what is your true business?" "Progress," she said grandly. "You've heard of the Kodak box camera, the gramophone, the electric light bulb? We brought them all to the world's attention, and many other wonders besides. So you, the Butterfly Club, invented all these things?" "No, we borrowed them." "Where from?" "From the future." Luna frowned a little, thinking for a moment that she had misheard. "I'm sorry, Aunt, but I simply don't know what you mean." "Those things would not be in our day-to-day lives in 1884 were it not for the Butterfly Club," Aunt Grace explained. "They belonged in the future. We found them and brought them back." But that's impossible." "As Mr. Conan Doyle over there will tell you," said Aunt Grace, pointing to a serious gentleman with an impressive mustache, "when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." Luna goggled at the gentleman. If the inventor of the great detective Sherlock Holmes could believe in all of this, it couldn't be an elaborate joke, could it? Aunt Grace's face was deadly serious. "I must tell you that time travel is perfectly possible." "But how?" "All in good time." Luna looked at Aunt Grace sharply. She didn't seem like she was making a joke. She wasn't that type. "So you are stealing from the future?" Aunt Grace turned on her. "Luna, what an ugly word." "We are merely borrowing, bringing these treasures back in time and bring progress forward. They would have come anyway. We just make them come sooner." "So why are you called the Butterfly Club? And why do you all have butterfly tattoos on your wrists?" She gave a rare smile. You noticed that, did you? It is because of the butterfly effect, a scientific phenomenon discovered by our founder. His research is the reason this club exists." "What's the butterfly effect?" Aunt Grace shot a look towards the grandfather clock, which was also a door. It obviously had two faces because it looked just the same on this side of the wall as it did on the other, except for one thing. On this side, its hands showed what was presumably the true time, which was 1 minute to noon. "I think," said Aunt Grace, "we will let our founder speak for himself." She turned to Constantine's father. "Dr. Cass," she said sweetly, "it is time." The door picked up the little table from the shadows and placed it in the center of the floor. Luna noticed that the table had 12 sides, just like the room, and that there was something on it covered in a dark cloth. The doctor removed the cloth with a flourish to reveal a little clockwork contraption, which seemed to be in the shape of a bird. A hush settled over the edges of the room as the members seated themselves and fell quiet. "I now call this meeting of the Butterfly Club to order," said Aunt Grace into the silence. The doctor wound a brass key at the contraption's back. There was a whirring noise, and the bird began to animate. As it cocked its little head to one side, bright ruby red eyes shining, clockwork wings fluttering and wrestling for all the world as if it lived, Aunt Grace addressed the bird in a commanding voice. "Kronos," she said, "show us the professor." Even more remarkably, the clockwork bird opened its little brass beak and spoke, initiating primary communication. It is said in a tiny, tiny metallic voice. Then it opened its beak wider and a broad beam of light shone forth, as tall as a lamppost. Luna watched with her mouth open, something young Victorian ladies weren't really supposed to do so. But she couldn't be blamed for this, as the beam of light resolved itself into arms and legs and a head, and a ghost appeared in the middle of the room.